So coming up next, we have Chef Chris Galarza, and he's going to be talking about kitchen electrification. He has a phenomenal presentation worked out for you. Going to touch a little bit on the awareness. He wants to introduce you, if you haven't become aware of it, to the growing trend of electrification, the necessity for decarbonization, and start talking a little bit more in depth about steps of incorporating these pieces of equipment, the benefits of it, and the work that really needs to be done so that we can upgrade our kitchens and improve the quality of life for the people around us and make our planet a better place, quite honestly. So I'm looking forward to his presentation. We'll be with you in just a few moments. Thank you so much. See you in a few minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, Chef Chris Galarza, welcome. Great to see you, Chef.
Hey, Chef. Thanks for having me. Super, super excited for this. Thank you for putting this together.
No, my pleasure. Glad to have you. You go ahead and start, and I'll be here if you need anything. What'd you think of Rick and Craig?
Trying to share my screen here. There we go. Uh, Honestly, they were great. I got introduced to the topic of mindfulness a few years ago, and quite honestly, I was like, Psh, that's nonsense. And then it wasn't until I started meditating that I realized how, and like kind of taking stock of my life, how important it was to really take care of your mental health, really take care of yourself. And it wasn't until then that I started to kind of find myself going from that angry, impersonal chef to the one that my staff really enjoyed having around. Right. It wasn't until then that I started to become a better partner for my fiance. It really allowed me to kind of battle my own demons and find a really kind of Zen approach to my life. I don't want to say Zen because I'm not really like a Zen master, but just find myself like very much happy and authentic. And I think that that was something I was missing for a long time because it was just nose to the grindstone. I can't slow down. What do you mean I'm going to stop and just focus on my breathing? I got things I got to do, and sometimes stopping and slowing down is the quickest way forward. And was doing in my life into perspective, and also gave me kind of some new ideas on how to take it forward.
Awesome. Well said. All right.
Thank
You
you.
ready to go, Chef?
You can see my screen all right? Yes, chef.
Yes, Chef. Good to go.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Chef Chris Galarza, and I'm the founder and culinary sustainability consultant of Forward Dining Solutions. I have been working with All Electric Kitchens for the last 5, 6 years now, and have had the pleasure to run both fossil fueled combustion kitchens and electric kitchens. I'm excited to bring this presentation to you. It's a topic that's not really much discussed in the culinary world. Hoping to change that. Hoping to bring more light to it because I truly think that this is going to happen whether people want it or not. Truth be told, but I think that it's important that we kind of get our hands into it and kind of try to guide it to where we think it's going to best suit us. Because if someone tells us what to do, we're not really going to enjoy that. But if we can kind of guide where this new emerging trend in technology uh, will go, it can really, really do wonders for our establishments. So first and foremost, I started my company back in 2019. Forward Dining Solutions was founded. Really to help designers sustainably build kitchens of the future. I found that so many times these projects were being built by people who've really never spent time in a kitchen or really have no idea how the equipment works. So one of the things that sets us apart is that we're one of the only firms, honestly, with a real world working knowledge of electric kitchen technologies. I've actually ran a kitchen, where most people have only talked about it in theory or had meetings with vendors or manufacturers, not really seeing it live. They don't understand how it's going to behave when you're cooking for a banquet of hundreds of people. We're also, my partner and I, have experience in all facets of dining, from five-star, five-diamond resorts to small-scale restaurants. We've worked for master chefs, culinary Olympians, and everything in between. We're also experienced in working with multidisciplinary teams to achieve sustainability goals. I always say that we kind of bridge the gap between the design world and the culinary world. We're able to walk into worlds and speak those languages. So we really can help express what the chef wants. So it's really important to kind of give some context of where this all began. And although we can make a case that's decades in the making, I want to say in this country, the topic of electrification really exploded when Berkeley in 2019 passed a gas ban that would be applied to all new construction. So if you are a new building, you are going to be mandated to go all electric. It didn't sit right with a lot of people. There's some lawsuits currently in place. That really kicked it off. And since then, this is just we can't go into the last 2 years really, but the current events, the last 4 months has been incredible. So Biden, his administration, regardless where you sit on the political spectrum, they have asked OSHA to create work safety standards for extreme heat for indoor and outdoor workers, which means restaurant workers who are in the kitchen, warehouse workers, etc. So the proposed guidelines is at 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Beyond that will trigger kind of OSHA coming in and kind of regulating your business or regulating or fining you, whatever the case is. You have to make changes in order for your indoor space to hit 82 degrees Fahrenheit minimum. It can't go beyond that. Also, Energy Star will no longer recommend gas appliances for its next most efficient list. Truth be told, it's just not efficient. So what this means is if you are, say, in a building that's going to be LEED certified, one of the prerequisites for LEED certification is Energy Star certification. So if you're trying to get LEED Platinum, you're going to have a really hard time because, gas just will not fit it. Will not cut it anymore. And this is the same for the USGBC, the United States Green Building Council, the same for WELL. It's just going with gas is going to make it harder for you to achieve these certifications. Also, in November, Ithaca became the first city in the United States to 100% decarbonize all their buildings. Doesn't matter if it's new or old. By 2030, every building will be all electric. Every restaurant, every hotel, everything. So New York City said, "Hold my beer. We're coming in too. We're not going to let you just show us up." And they said, "We're going to ban gas as well." And that was just to finish off 2021, which was really a banner year for electrification and decarbonization. And then the state of New York became the first state to announce that they will also be banning gas in that state. So, true, and also because of what kicked off in Berkeley, now thanks to our friends at the EPA, we know that there are many cities and states who are moving towards this. So, like I said, this is going to be coming on the pike, and as chefs, we are wholly unprepared. So, I'm very happy to be talking more about this. So, to recontextualize the argument a little bit, because I'm sure some of you are like, "This is absolutely insane. Why would anybody want to do this? Gas is clearly superior. Everything we do is gas, 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 gas." Imagine if everything around us was gas. If we didn't electrify everything, what would that look like? It may seem a little silly, but I think it's really important to kind of put some context behind it. So let's watch this quick little video. So again, I understand it may seem a little silly, but it's honestly silly to argue that, we can't cook without gas. I honestly think that that's one of the most egregious myths ever told. But what is the point? Why even have this conversation? Why try to change what we've been doing for so long? It's worked, right? Well, it really hasn't, right? We all know that working in a gas kitchen can be dangerous. There's flames everywhere. At any given moment, you can be seriously harmed, burned. Fires can happen. Not to mention the fact that we're working with sharp objects. So really, everything we do we need to move and work with precision. And one false step can really screw that up. But in an electric kitchen, it doesn't exist. Like I can say wholeheartedly that when I was working in gas kitchens, I didn't realize the damage I was doing to my body. Because I remember being on the line, and my thermometer would read 130. We'd get through a rush, and then we would be clamoring to the bathroom so we can throw up, because our bodies will fight this every step of the way. And the only piece of advice we're given to push past that is you got to push yourself. You're obviously not doing it good. You're not doing it well enough. You need to push yourself. Get used to it. Only the best will make it through, and that may be true, but that mentality hasn't worked. Case in point, we can't find people to work in restaurants anymore. It's really, really hard to find employees. They don't want to work in those environments for that pay, and miss out on the opportunities with their family. I always say it takes a certain kind of crazy to enjoy what we do, but if in an electric kitchen, people can be comfortable. You can create beautiful food in a comfortable environment. And I have data to back that up that we're going to be going through very, very shortly. So what are the byproducts of cooking with gas? Well, you have carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, formaldehyde, particulates like soot and smoke, the things that can also build up on your pans and make your pans now cook unevenly. And also, more importantly, carbon monoxide. Now, we're going to hone in on carbon monoxide because that one is the one that's so dangerous that people put sensors in their home to find out if there's a contamination or leak. So let's break that down a little bit further. So carbon monoxide is an odorless, colorless toxin, and the outdoor concentrations of which are anywhere from 0.03 to 2.5 parts per million. The federal standards dictates anything beyond 9 parts per million. Everyone has to go inside and just get away from the outside until they figure out where this contamination is coming from. But truth be told, when you're cooking with this natural gas, quote unquote, it can far exceed 200 parts per million. And symptoms of which are nausea, vomiting, headache, lightheadedness. And now we're learning that even when your equipment is off, there was a Stanford study released last week, even when your equipment is off, we as a country are emitting so much of this gas that leaks out, the pollution of which over the course of 20 years is about 500,000 cars, which is awful. And that's in your home, that's in your restaurants. And complications of which are permanent brain damage, cardiac damage, and even death. And we know also that when breathing these noxious fumes, it upsets people's asthma. It's also leading, like environmental causes like this are also the leading cause for childhood rates of asthma, which by last count is about a $50 billion health cost to this country, to the families of this country. And also it affects those of us who have had COVID and severely diminished lung capacity. It's just, it's not a good way to move forward. And also it affects thermal comfort in the kitchen. There was a study a few years ago done by ASHRAE where they had to figure out what is thermal comfort, and they broke it down into 3 sections where you have air velocity and humidity, things that you cannot control, right? Things that you as the operator can control, like air temperature and radiant temperature. Things you as the individual can control, like what clothing are you wearing? What's the activity level that you're currently performing at? And you can see that can radically change how you feel, right? And how comfortable you are. So they had to identify what is thermal comfortability. Then they zeroed in between 68 and 82 degrees Fahrenheit, right? That is the threshold. That's the sweet spot. So they tested over 100 kitchens in the U.S. for a week during summer and winter conditions in all different types of climate zones. And what they found is that the only time a kitchen was comfortable is either 1, if it was freezing outside, right, in the winter, 2, if you were prepping, and 3, when you were cleaning. But when it came to actual production, the meat and potatoes, how we make our money as an industry, we were wildly outside of that and the humidity was also insane. So here's another breakdown of that data where they figured, all right, we're going to make this the top of the scale, this +3 hot, and we found that kitchens are far exceeding that. Again, just it's data showing how uncomfortable we are as chefs who work in these environments. But it doesn't have to be that way. This is data from my actual kitchen. And you can see down here where it says from September 9, 2019 to September 16, 2019. You can look it up in Gibsonia, Pennsylvania, just north of Pittsburgh. It was 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit that week. It was beautiful. Not a cloud in sight. It was the quote unquote perfect summer week. And the data shows that this is the temperature right here. My kitchen never hit 74 degrees Fahrenheit, and in fact stayed between 68 and 72 on average. So it was cooler in my kitchen during service, during production, next to the equipment than it was to be outside. This is hard data. So what can you find in an electric kitchen? What does electric kitchens actually mean? What is induction cooking? What is it? So induction, what it's obviously not gas. It's not these coils, these electric resistive coils, or this radiant, which I call coils 2.0. It's not any of those, because although the coils are far more efficient than gas, it is in fact slow, right? And this is what I thought of when I started getting into this field. And I found that, again, although they are more efficient, they are slower. You have to convert the electrical energy into heat energy, which takes time. And in the kitchen, we got to go fast. But what induction is, to say for way of cooking, it's a way of cooking using electromagnetic currents to heat your cooking vessel. And it's an easy way to meet sustainability goals, as well as save yourself some money. You can see that only the pan is getting hot. On the photo on the left there, you see that the ice isn't melting, but the pan is at a boil, and that is just indicative of how the equipment works. So to break it down even further, cooking with induction, what happens is you take this copper coil that you tightly wound, you pump electricity through it. As it's going through the coil, it is creating what's called an eddy current, which creates an oscillating electromagnetic current that then excites the ferromagnetic molecules in the pan and heats it up from the inside out. Essentially, you create molecular friction with this electromagnetic current, and it is how it gets hot. It's because the metallic ions are very linear, which is why metal gets hot and gets cold rather quickly. Easiest way to understand this is your microwave sends these little waves that excites the water molecules at such a high rate of speed that they create molecular friction and thus cooks your food from the inside out. Similar principles, wildly different ways of getting there. So what are the pros and cons? Truth be told, let's focus on cons, because we are Americans and we focus on negativity first. Initial cost, right? What's this going to cost me? So if you were to have a 6-burner induction range with a built-in oven, say from South Bend, right? That's going to run you about $38,000. If you were to get that exact company's 6-burner gas range, you are going to run about $32,000. So a little bit of a difference there, but there's also government programs to offset that cost. Okay, but still, it's a negative, right? Compatible cookware. We've all worked in places where our owners may have bought cheap aluminum pans, which doesn't even stand up to the rigors of a kitchen. But ultimately, aluminum is non-magnetic, therefore will not work on induction. And what is the electrical capacity? What is the retrofit hurdle? How much is it going to cost you to upgrade your panels? How much panels you need to upgrade? What's the load that you actually need to run a kitchen? Those are the things that can be costly. But what are the pros? Very high efficiency. We're talking 80 to 93%. And for this presentation, I wanted to give gas every chance of being successful. So there are maybe 1, maybe 2 gas ranges that are 50% efficient, but I put it in this as an average because I think that, I'm not here to bash gas. I'm here to show the data and let you make the decision for yourself. So induction ranges heat up very, very quickly, right? Induction gives you far more precision in temperature adjustments than you can with gas, despite the myths saying otherwise, right? You may have the visual cue with gas, but You don't have the precision you do with induction. We can set up to the degree that you're going to be cooking in, where you can't do that with gas. No idling equipment, which means no, you know, grills just going off nonstop, or burners just being on, just making your space hot. No combustion, which means no carbon monoxide, which is great. There's a dramatic improvement to thermal comfort, as I just outlined, and it extends the life of your pots and pans. No warping, no soot buildup, no inconsistent cooking because there's cold spots, or whatever the case is. And that's honestly, you save a lot of money that way. What sort of solutions exist? Well, you have your combi ovens, griddles, flat tops, tilt skillets, steamers, broilers, ranges. Really, there is nothing that a gas kitchen has that the electric kitchen does not. It's also refining tradition. Electric tandoori ovens are now becoming a staple overseas. Induction woks are really changing the game. That was one of the things that chefs, especially Asian chefs, were very concerned about. How are we going to continue to cook the food we cook in our woks if our woks are rounded and your induction is flat? Great point. So these manufacturers went and they figured it out. In fact, did you know that it takes up to 1 million gallons of water per year to run a gas wok? Right, when you're pumping 100,000 BTUs in your wok, that's a lot of heat. Metal will warp over time. You need to cool it down, so they constantly have water running. So by switching that one piece of equipment, the indirect cost savings would be 1 million gallons of water, roughly, for your induction wok, which is enough to pay for itself like 10 times over. Especially if you're on the West Coast, it's so much like water's gold over there. So
that's insane.
Go. Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. And in fact, like people, Chef, you and I both know, cooking is almost spiritual, right? It gives us an opportunity to connect with our ancestors, to cook the same recipes that my grandmother cooked, or whatever the case is, or whatever, right? But now we are able to preserve those traditions, because as we move to a more responsible culture, and I say that because the things that we're putting ourselves through by working with gas just to be able to cook is not responsible. We are able to preserve those traditions, preserve those recipes, because ultimately cooking is technique. It's not the equipment in which you cook with. So it doesn't matter if you cook on, a bonfire or a gas range or an induction. A saute is still a saute. A braise is still a braise. It doesn't change.
You just need a different heat source.
Exactly. Like what we're talking about here is how we're going to get a piece of metal hot so we can cook. That's it, right? If you break it all the way down, that is it. So the idea that chefs truly think that if you take away their gas, they can't cook is really a detriment to the chef, but is also a feather in the cap of the gas industry, whose propaganda has worked marvelously. And I'm not here to bash gas industry. Like, we're all out to make money. It's cool. But it's just chefs truly think that without gas, they're like they can't operate, and that's not true. We need to change that mindset.
We'll come back. I don't want to interrupt you. I was just thinking.
Please.
That number was staggering. Thinking about that volume of water to run a wok station, and I've worked a wok station before, so I can relate to the water that's always running. It was staggering. Right.
And imagine if you have like 6 or 7 of those. How much money are you throwing away just to cool down your wok? And it's not like you're sacrificing power. It's not like you're sacrificing the amount of food you can cook, and we'll go into those figures soon. I mean, it really, that, like, it's the indirect cost that people don't think about. They think, what's the price tag, right? Which is why I brought up the example of the gas versus induction cost. And we'll go into costs as well, but like, what's it going to take to clean, right? There's so many indirect costs that people don't even think about that we're going to touch on, that just simply making this switch can radically change how efficient your operation. Even if you don't change how you run the operation, just the equipment alone will radically change how efficient your operation is, how much food you can put out, how much faster it is to clean, how much money you're going to save on your chemicals, how much money you're going to save on your water, how much money you're going to save on just operating, right? And people are going to say, well, gas is cheaper than electric, and we'll go into that as well. But yeah, the indirect costs far outweigh the what it costs to run gas.
Well, then we'll talk. I want to talk about precision later too. So I'll let you
Sure,
keep going. But
sure. So gas versus electric, gas range, electric range. This is kind of the heavyweight championship fight. Um, let's start with gas. Again, I want to give it the absolute best possible chance of being successful. So I'm giving it the unicorn, the 50% efficient gas range. At that level, you can cook 38.6 pounds of food per hour. It's going to need time and level grease to clean it. We all know you're going to have to take all those burners off. You're going to have to burn it. You're going to have to degrease it, scrub everything down, take the drip tray, degrease that, scrub all that stuff down, throw away the foil, replace the foil, put it back together. Light those pilot lights, because if you don't, the guy in the morning is screwed. You have to make sure that all this stuff is done. And through all that, you can cause burns, you can cause fires. How many times have we seen, a towel catch on fire from negligence, right? But with your induction, we're talking 90+% efficiency. We're talking 70.9 pounds of food per hour, nearly double that of the best gas range ever made, right? It's easy to clean because there's no thermal sources if you say are making like you overboil your cream, right? It's not going to burn on. You're not going to get those circles that you get when you're using those resistive um, electric stoves. So you just wipe it all off, right? It's easy to clean. So just hot soapy water takes care of the whole thing. It's safer to use because, again, no thermal sources, no burning gas. No burning towels or anything like that. The only thing that gets hot is the pan that is touching the glass top. So the handle's totally safe, right? No more assume everything's hot, because the only thing getting hot is what is in contact. Walks, 100,000 BTU walk, 19% efficient, 124 pounds of food per hour. Now, I want to stress all these figures I'm giving you is under lab conditions, which means that when you put it in actual operation, it's actually a lot less, because people don't work the equipment the way that the scientists are testing the equipment, right? So to go back, the 50% efficient gas range, 38.6 pounds of food per hour, all that stuff, that's assuming that every burner is going at all times, that you know that you are cooking nonstop. But how many times have we had a lull in service where all burners are still on, just to keep those pans hot, so we can cook quicker later, right? Then you have more waste, then you have lower efficiency. So again, this is under lab conditions, giving this all the best possible chance of success. So this is the actual figures when using a gas wok. The induction wok, as you can see, it's a simple plug-in wok, a 5 kilowatt wok. It's 91% efficiency, and you can cook nearly the same amount of food per hour, and on a much smaller footprint. Now you can cook on a countertop the same amount that you can cook on, giant floor plan of your gas wok. Quick comparisons: if you have a 30,000 BTU burner, gas range at 35% efficiency, you're going to do, like, each burner will have 10 kilobtus of energy. That's to the food. 5 kilowatts for the induction wok. Sorry, for the induction range, each burner, 14 kilobtus to the food, which is why we're able to cook faster. With your wok, 100,000 BTUs, 20% efficient, 20 kilobtus going to the food. And then these are various different levels of wok. So you can have the 3.5 kW wok, which gives you 11 kilobtu, which is, again, a much smaller wok. The 5 kW that I just showed you, 15 kilobtus going to the food. Or you can go for the massive 12 kilowatts at 35,000 BTUs, which smokes the best gas wok. And I will also say is entirely too much power for any chef to handle. And they even go up from there to a 16 kW, which they're phasing out because they realize entirely too much power. As chefs, we kind of work like cavemen. So we see, big number, holy crap, that's what I want. But when in actual kind of when you put the equipment to use, it's far more power than we're able to, and everyone will kind of burn stuff. So I would recommend 5 kW if you really really need that power, 12, but it's really not necessary. So cost comparison. Assuming that you are running your restaurant or your establishment for 360 days a year for 15 hours a day, and $1 per therm, which is $1 per 100,000 BTUs, which is a lot of gas. 17 cents per kilowatt hour. These are all national average statistics. Your gas range will cost you, a 6 burner gas range, $1,123 a year to operate. That same 6 burner range but induction will cost you $1,114 per year to operate. So the cost is really the same, really. $9 difference, not really a big deal. But let's just outline that, yeah, electricity is far more expensive than gas, but because of the efficiencies, because of how well it's used, the cost of operations is about the same. So what new tech is out there, right? What are the things that we can take advantage of now that can help our service? So the variable cooking center from Rationale, able to sear, fry, boil, hot hold, pressure cook, all sorts of stuff. They have this new induction tech which allows it. So say one of the induction, they're going to call it tiles, goes down, the whole unit doesn't go down. They can just simply pop one out because they're all independent of each other, as opposed to, say, you were on a griddle like a flat top, and one piece of induction goes down, the whole unit will go down. It's the same thing if you have a gas griddle and there's a problem with the gas intake coming in, the whole unit will go down. Now it's really a thing of the past, and honestly, it makes being short staffed a lot easier. Say you're going to cook 50 pounds of pasta, you can set up one of these because they make big tilt skillets. Have your pasta in, it'll fill it up with water, bring it up to a boil, drop the pasta, cook the pasta. Then they would drain the pasta water and then shock it. So, but without any human intervention, right? So, really revolutionary stuff. The Electrolux Skyline, combi ovens can cook, and then blast chill, and then you can even retherm it. Just simply swapping out to this piece of equipment and operating exactly the same will save you 5% off your operating cost. Right. So if you are doing brunch, for instance, and you go ahead and say, all right, we're going to toss these prime ribs in there, let them go overnight. Once it reaches that, the end of the cook time or whatever temperature you set it to, it's going to cool itself down, with the blast chiller. And then if you have it set to, say, 6 a.m., it'll retherm at 6 a.m. So you are ready for service. All, again, without human intervention. And the equipment speaks to each other as well. Also, ventless technology. So what is ventless? What's a ventless hood system? It's a self-contained hood system with no outside duct, right? It can also be built into other equipment itself, like these examples. You have pizza ovens, combi ovens, convection ovens. It runs the gambit. And also a flat top, the Evo flat top, which is like going to be replacing what we see in, like, say, the teppanyaki. So it's going to it's a ventless piece of technology. It can also be induction, and you're able to cook without the hood system above you, kind of take it anywhere you want, and it works really, really well. Also, the ventless hood system includes the following: built-in multi-stage filtration system, fire suppression system, built-in sensors, everything you need to operate your establishment. So your whole kitchen can be ventless. So how the four-stage filtration system works: so you have your traditional baffle filter, then you have your fire-rated pre-filter, your HEPA filter, and your carbon charcoal filter. So the air coming out is actually cleaner than what goes in, like cleaner than what you're breathing. On average, it will come out of that ventless. Standalone, so you can have standalone canopy built in. You can even have a countertop version if you like. So if you have a really small space, you can have one of those counter refrigeration, your equipment on top, and then the hood system over top. It's also easier to maintain. So you longer the days you have to have people come in and clean your vents and clean all that stuff. Now it's just you just swap out the filters and it tells you when to swap them out. So it makes, really idiot proof. So why go ventless at all, right? What's the point? Who cares? Well, if you're putting a restaurant in a historic building, it's prohibited to put in ductwork or fans. Extensive ductwork for traditional hoods are cost prohibitive. So if you are in a high-rise building or a stadium or an arena, it doesn't make any sense to spend that money when you could just get this piece of equipment and you have any space can be, a usable space. Perfect solution for lease spaces. So if you really, really, really want that corner lot where that old insurance salesman was at, but it's like the perfect location for a restaurant, but there's no infrastructure there. And the owner doesn't want to put in that infrastructure because why would he? Now you can just lease that space, make sure the electrical power is there, and you are good to go. You turn any space into a restaurant. So it really will revolutionize how restaurants are built. Also, because it's a smaller footprint, so you can put any size piece of equipment in there to utilize the dead space in your kitchen, making your kitchen kind of work even more efficiently. And combined with electrical equipment, like I said, can make any space into a restaurant. It can really change the game because if you are, say, an owner of a building and you don't want to put in that infrastructure, like I said, because restaurants have a high rate of failure, then you don't have to kind of hamper yourself and really do all that costly remodel just to have it fail. Now, and then also if you have a landlord who, let's be honest, can be jerks, just grab your equipment and leave. No harm, no foul. And also energy efficient equipment, they qualify for tax benefits. Again, offsetting the cost of building. For instance, if you were the East Bay Community Energy, if you were building an all electric space, you can get up to $17,500 to offset some of that cost. That's that may not sound a lot in the when you're looking at the whole build, but money's money. So myth busting, this is where I kind of say, hey chefs, this is all you chefs who's like, this is insane. Why would you want to take my gas? I will never let that happen. And then you're coming up with these myths, right? Why would I want induction? Because induction cooking speed's exaggerated. We just showed how that's not true. If you were to have a gallon and a half of water, it will take you 8 minutes to bring it up to a boil on a gas range. On induction, we're talking 2 minutes flat. Sauteing is impossible on induction because once you take the pan off the cooktop, it's not connected to the induction. How's it possibly going to saute? Impossible, that they say. Well, I would also say once you take your pan off the gas range, your flames aren't following your pan. So same principles apply. Metal gets hot. It stays hot. Chefs or home cooks can't preheat their pans. Therefore, they can't saute properly, which is true. You shouldn't preheat your pans with induction because there's no need to. Long are the days where you have a stack of saute pans with a burner on high just to keep the pans hot because it's so inefficient. Your pans can't get up to temp hot fast enough. You don't have to anymore. You put it down. Cold pan doesn't matter. I used to do demos where I would put the pan in the freezer, and then I would get whatever vegetables I was sauteing from the fridge, and within seconds I was at a full saute. Cooking with gas gives you more control. That's the big one. You have this visual cue with flame. And we talked a little bit about precision, but say I were to say, Chef Ford, I'm going to need you to, sear off some short ribs. Probably not you because you're going to know exactly what you're talking about. But say I have, cook A. I say, I'm going to need you to sear off some short ribs and braise it. Yeah. I'm going to need you to sear off some short ribs and braise it on the medium low. You're going to sear it off to what you think is a good sear. Then you have medium, you have low, and everything in between. And, as chef can tell you, you can under and you can over braise an item. So how do we keep it consistent? I can say, cook B, I'm going to need you to sear off those short ribs at 435 degrees Fahrenheit and braise at a level 2. We now have a more consistent braised item. And every single time you go there, it's the same short ribs. Long are the days where you go, oh, don't go on Tuesday. They have their B squad. The food's not as good as when you go on Friday. No, it's good every time. Also, induction cooking technology does not accommodate you know, cooking on woks. We just showed that's not true, and in fact, it's like not only is it more efficient, not only is it just as fast, but it saves you so much more money in the process. This is my personal favorite. Glass surfaces of the induction equipment will crack and warp because it's not able to withstand a professional kitchen setting. Chefs are just tough, right? We're big, burly men. We're just strong. We're going to break everything, although that myth has long been busted forever ago. But let's kind of dive into that one. So, first and foremost, it's tempered ceramic glass. It's not glass. It's not tempered glass. Tempered ceramic glass. Big, big difference. It means it's very strong. It won't warp. Tempered glass can withstand temperatures of about 600 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty good. But tempered ceramic glass can withstand temperatures far exceeding 1400 degrees Fahrenheit. And you want proof? That's my actual cooktop. When I took that picture it was a 5-year-old surface, barely a scratch on it. In fact, you can see how clean my walls are. Another one is induction is dangerous for pacemakers and metal implants. If you have a cook who's got a pacemaker, I can't possibly put an induction because the electromagnetic current can be dangerous. Truth be told, it's not. The electromagnetic field is very low. We're talking 2 to 3 inches off the surface. So, my advice is gas or electric, don't lay on the equipment. If your staff is laying on the equipment, then I kind of have to question your leadership skills. And also, it's perfectly safe according to the American Heart Association. So what are the truths, right? Busted all these myths. I've talked all day long. What like when you have this in your kitchen, what's the truth, and what are the benefits? Well, it gives you more power, more control. It's safer to use, easier to clean. It's going to save you money. It's going to save you energy, and it's going to save you the carbon that you put out into the atmosphere. And that's going to be a recurring theme as we move on. The induction flat top, indistinguishable from its gas counterpart, except that you have a temperature dial, right? Which gives you unparalleled control. Extremely quick warm up, far quicker than gas, easier to clean. Hot soapy water. We never use chemicals on that. We have the chrome top. It's just hot soapy water, and that's it. And also, again, saves you money, energy, and CO2. Now, electric doesn't always mean induction. This was our triple deck oven with 2 built-in with 2 built-in proofers. It gave us much more control. We were able to set like the bottom, we can set that to a certain temperature, right? That stone. The top element, we could set that to another temperature. And then it also gave us this heat recovery. There was no real heat loss, so we were able to have what's called like a heat shield, that we called it. So what that meant is that we can say we were making pizzas, set that bottom crust to a very high temperature to get a nice, good, crust, and then set the top element so it slowly melts and bakes that cheese. So we have a perfect pizza every time. And then that heat shield I talked about, when we have that door open, that heat doesn't rush out. So we're able to be in there manipulating our pizzas, our pastries, whatever the case is, and it maintains the heat in those cabinets. And it also has built-in steam injection, so we can have perfect baguettes or perfect crusty breads every single time. And again, saves money, energy, and CO2. Induction warmers. These are they come in two different types. We got the flat, sleek versions. Again, unparalleled control. Those were set to either 130 degrees Fahrenheit or 210. Again, precise. Sleek design, very good for guest-facing interactions. There's also the wells that you can get. But still, no steam table. Even though you can have the ones that you can set in, it doesn't create steam or anything like that. So long are the days where you're going to pick something up and burn yourself or something like that. It's easy to clean, hot soapy water like everything else. And again, it's going to save you in the long run. Now we're coming up on my favorite piece of equipment in any kitchen is the hood system. We had a variable airflow hood with remote monitoring and adjusting with heat recovery, and I'll go into that in the next slide. But it saved us so much money, and I'll save that big figure for the end. How it worked is that it had these sensors that would scan our cooktops, and when it sensed that, say, our range was getting hot, right? We had a pan on there getting hot. then it would kind of ramp itself up. When it sensed that the internal ductwork hit a certain threshold that we had set, it would ramp itself up again. So that means it would turn itself on and off as needed. And after we finished cooking, it would capture our heat, and it worked with the geothermal system to warm the building. So instead of just expelling our heat out, through the vents on the roof, it would save that heat up food grade propylene glycol, which is what was coming up from the geothermal wells, and it would warm it up to a cool 72 degrees Fahrenheit, which we would then pump throughout the building. So even winter or summer, we were always warming our building. With the geothermal well system, which we had 46 on the campus, it would come up at 55 degrees Fahrenheit. So the heat waste coming off of our kitchen would be enough to warm that up. And we also were able to track efficiencies in real time. We were able to identify errors. I don't think my kitchen ever hit 60% efficient or less. We were also always very high. This particular day, we were running the hood systems at 94% efficient, which means of the 100% that it could be on, we were only using 6% of the energy. We were able to identify errors in real time and track, the usage of individual hoods, the CFMs, the temperature, all that stuff. So this is data from my actual kitchen. The gray bars being if someone were to walk in and just turn on the piece of equipment. So I turn on the hoods and it just run at full blast until we were done. The blue bars are how we actually ran the kitchen. And you can see that we were far more efficient in how we ran it as opposed to if we didn't have that. The savings, this is the big one, because really the cost disparity between gas and electric isn't that much. But this particular piece of equipment was 3 times that of its counterpart. So the constant flow hood system would be about $100,000 for that footprint. Mine cost $300,000. That sounds like a lot. It's pretty scary. But we were projected to pay it off in 14 months. And I say projected because we actually paid it off in 9 months. So in 9 months of operation, we saved the equivalent of $300,000 in just that one piece of equipment. That's a huge savings. So,
sorry, Chef. Can I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So,
John,
how did that savings occur? Was that in?
So because it was only turning itself on and off as needed, as opposed to it being on 100% of the time all day long.
Gotcha.
So
and over 9 months.
Yeah. In 9 months, we saved that much. So, for instance, this day was not uncommon for it to be 94% efficient. So instead of using 100% of the energy, we were only using 6%. And you combine that over the course of 9 months, that's enough to pay off that piece of equipment. Which means after that, it's all savings, it's all profit, it's all money back in your pocket. So who's made the switch, right? This all sounds cool theoretically, but is truly the best chefs, why would they want to do this? Well, Fat Duck has done it. Pineapple and Pearl in DC has done it. Per Se in New York has done it. Alinea in Chicago has done it. The French Laundry has done it. In fact, Noma, the best restaurant in the world, has done it. And you might say, Larry, these are just aberrant behavior by some of the best chefs in the world. Cool. The Culinary Olympics, all electric. The Bocuse d'Or, all electric. In fact, every major or every international competition in the world is an all-electric cooking space. So really, we are about 30 years behind our brethren overseas. Right? Our brothers and sisters overseas have figured this out. We have not. Right? We have some restaurants here in America, some establishments here in America, but not to the level that the rest of the world is. To normalize it at the level of the Olympics and the Bocuse d'Or, and Chef, you could speak to this yourself. It's pretty jarring, right? That jump at that level, and then to have to kind of compete with equipment you're not familiar with, or have to spend an entire 6 months, a year, however long you're training for it, to familiarize yourself with the equipment, when everyone else is just super comfortable with it. It kind of sets us at a disadvantage. So,
absolutely, Chef. It was, that's definitely something that I wanted to touch on, and we can save it for later, or we can get into it now. But
this is the last slide.
Oh, go ahead. I'll be back.
No, we're all good. That was it.
Well,
Yeah.
but I mean, I guess it's a phenomenal segue because looking back, that was some of my favorite cooking, and it was because of my preparation for the Boku store that really I started to make the mental switch. And now most of the stuff that I do is based in electric. I prefer induction. I prefer electric combi ovens. When it comes to flavor, if I want to cook with charcoal, that's a different thing. But the majority of my cooking, I prefer the control, the precision that comes with electric
Yeah.
cooking.
And I agree. I mean, honestly, like I prefer to cook on wood. Right. I love that. But the thing is, gas doesn't give you any of that. It doesn't give you flavor at all. So why are we using such an archaic way of cooking when we have such a much better way? And like the crazy thing is that, like I said before, we're essentially as a nation trying to figure out how we're going to heat up a piece of metal to cook when there's stuff out there that's far beyond the pale. Like, have you heard of radio wave cooking?
No,
Yeah, radio wave cooking is a way of obviously using radio waves
radio
to
waves to
cook.
cook.
Yeah, but it's
Yes.
precision at a level we've never heard of. So I
Right.
saw this demo where it was a red snapper in a block of ice, and with radio wave cooking, they were able to cook that snapper without ever melting the ice.
In the ice.
So in the ice. So imagine that in the hands of chefs, right? Can you imagine, like, I don't know, a simple ball of ice cream with molten fudge on the inside? Like, just something that's simple, but imagine what other chefs can come up with by utilizing that piece of technology. By utilizing that tech, we can revolutionize how we cook, how we serve, how we present. But we're still on this. But we're still on the conversation of, well, I don't know, man. Gas is pretty cool. That flame looks cool, right? But there's so many more things out there. We need to normalize this and create a better culinary ecosystem. Catch up to our brothers and sisters overseas, and maybe then we figured out how to pay people more. Maybe now figuring out how to create a better ecosystem for chefs, we will start seeing more people come back and start kind of bringing ourselves back.
Well, and it's. I think that's right in line with some of the things that we're talking about as far as creating a superior environment for people to be drawn to want to be a part of, to want to work in. I think that's a big component to that. For me,
Right.
it's a control conversation. It's predictability. It's a consistency conversation. You talk about level 2, level 3. If anybody wants to discuss or argue the precision, I usually talk about the circulator, right? Like,
Right.
can you circulate with gas? And the answer is not really. You can move the water over a burner, but you certainly don't have the control.
No.
And and it was funny when you were talking about the warping of the glass. I've never seen that happen, but I have worked with more warped saute pans because they're camped out on the back burner of gas. And
Yeah.
look, I spent the majority of my career cooking on gas, and
Oh, we all have. Yeah.
and I get it, but when you spend, or say you make the investment into a quality set of cookware for your professional kitchen. When I took over at Ford, I reached out to All Clad. I refit the kitchens with the smallware budget with All Clad. And it's heartbreaking to see the damage, to see the warping, to see what happens to pans when they're used on gas, when you can use them far more efficiently and a lot less abusively with something
Right.
like induction.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I remember being in school or being in the industry and having to scrub the bottoms of the pans, trying to keep them clean because chefs like you have no idea how much that costs. And then learning that that black on the bottom actually has an effect on how you cook.
Yeah.
I was like, man. So I was really scrubbing that thing out. Now I haven't scrubbed the bottom of a pan in years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, carbon buildup it's awful to deal with. It's a mess. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. It's awful.
just to tie into your last comment, I mean, the best restaurants in the world that want that precision, that want a cooler environment in their kitchen, that want more control, they're electric. And,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, the equipment that we used when we were at the IK as a team, it was extraordinary equipment. There was
Yeah.
no shortcoming. It was almost, I mean, I guess it was challenging in some ways because it was so hot, so fast that, I mean, you would have a hard time, comparing the two. Like hotter and faster than gas could be, and I mean, we can't. I don't want to detract from the fact that they run 220 as their normal electrical current, right? Which allows for a significant amount of power to come through the
Right,
line.
but like if you're in a kitchen putting equipment in, uh, people don't realize that like over 20% of the ovens in kitchens are electric.
Right.
A lot of convection ovens are electric, so that 220 line's there, and
Right.
all that runs off 220 as well. But yeah, no, you're right. In your home, you would have to get that ran for sure.
One of the biggest, most cost prohibitive things that I've seen, and please dispel this if it's a myth,
Please.
is the cost of installing three-phase power. That's one of
Yeah.
that has gotten in my way before because
Well, yeah, for sure.
it's
I mean,
expensive.
that's part of the electrofit hurdle that I talked about earlier, right?
Right.
Upgrading your services, making sure that you can get those things ran. And also depends on where you're at. If you're in a more rural area, you'll probably have to add a transformer, and the utility company will not pay for that. You got to
Yeah.
do it, but then you don't own it. So yeah, it
Two
can be
hundred and
cost
seventy-five
prohibitive.
thousand dollars.
It's a lot of money. Yeah, I was working with a culinary school, and that came up, and we had
Mm-hmm.
that was the first time we heard of it, and the city would not pick that up, and they were like,
Right.
"Well, I guess this is where the project ends." But
You don't
yeah,
own
there
it,
are
but you
some,
buy it.
exactly. You don't own it, but you buy it. They say thank you, and then when you're, say the school fails, or they move to a bigger building, whatever the case is, you don't take that transformer with you. It stays there
Right.
forever. So they say thank you for the donation. Now get out of here.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that is a big deal, right?
Mhm.
But thing is, if you were to build a new kitchen, if you were to build a new building, the omission of the gas infrastructure is enough to give you an instant return on investment, an instant ROI. You can immediately, like, you save that much money with the infrastructure, as opposed to just putting in, making sure that the electrical panels, the electrical power is there.
Well, and even with a ventless hood, the cost of installing ventless hood, I'm I just like poking at the
Oh,
conversation
please.
because
No, this is good dialogue. Exactly. We need
I
we
mean
need more of that.
I'm supportive. I'm very supportive of
Hmm.
of really quality electric devices. I really am because I really like the control and the way I can cook with them. I'm also a huge fan of ventless hoods. I think they're amazing, especially when you don't have $25,000 to install a 6 foot by 4 foot hood, or
Hmm.
you can't duct it, or you can't get power for it. Or, you know what I mean? If you have a tiny little snack bar that needs a little cook surface or
Hmm.
some little cook setup, being able to install a ventless piece of equipment without having to punch holes, and it allows you so much flexibility with how you
Hmm.
organize your equipment and what
Yeah.
you can really do.
Yeah. And I'll even add that, we all know what Next does, right? Grand Actors Restaurant, the one that every 3 or 4 months it's a new restaurant, new menu, all that stuff. Imagine just saying, okay, we're going to completely redesign the restaurant every single time. Now we can just pick up our hoods and move it, pick up the equipment and move it, have a whole new setup, and make
Right.
each menu a unique kitchen setup, a unique environment. That's insane, but it's true. We can do that.
Mhm.
If all you gotta do is unplug the piece of equipment, which makes cleaning so much easier, right? You can pull everything out, scrub, clean, just take care of the whole space. That would be the cleanest kitchen in America, probably.
Should be.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I'd be
No, I
willing to
mean
bet
they're
Grand Axis kitchens are pretty damn clean. So,
true. Well, that's another thing I want to bring up. That's a great point. Is that not just cleanliness, but we're talking temperature as well. Because his restaurant's electric, if you were to go, say, have a chef's table there, you'd be comfortable. I've known a lot of chefs who cannot sell a chef's table because it's too hot for the consumer.
mhm.
So your most expensive so your most expensive table in the building is not being
It's
sold.
the least comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will also say that the most expensive thing in any restaurant is an empty seat. So now you have an empty seat in your kitchen, you're not
Mhm.
making money off that.
Yeah, and I guess that's probably where that conversation goes of where else is it costing you money? Where
Yeah.
what are the unseen costs? I mean, you had some great data, and I would love to. I'd love to look at those numbers a little bit
Sure.
more offline, just
Yeah.
to actually see them. Your graphs were very useful, but I'd be willing to bet that there's probably a lot more hidden cost to the discomfort from a staffing, training.
Mhm.
I mean, what's the word I'm looking for? Like disability. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
wonder if even insurance is a thing. You know what I mean?
Well,
So,
glad you brought that up because that's something that we're going to be pushing next. So, like, we had incredible growth as a company in 2021. It was like our first official, like, full year of operation. And
congratulations.
yeah, dude, it was nuts. Like, now we're going to be working with the EPA, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. We're on the lawsuit with the city of Berkeley to help kind of educate the California Restaurant Association, who levied a lawsuit against them to kind of, you know, it like to say like the things that they're saying is not true, and saying that you can't cook with gas, without gas and things like that. But like we're now going to be working with manufacturers, with chefs, with operation. It's insane the growth we saw, and this is still a topic that's ultimately unknown to a lot of Americans. Right?
Mhm.
You turn on the TV, you're going to hear about politics, you're going to hear about COVID, but New York State, with one of the biggest city in America, is banning gas, not a blip on the radar. So, Detroit is looking at possibly doing the same thing, which the Motor City going all electric would be insane, but awesome. Massachusetts is looking at the same thing. An entire county in Washington has banned gas. It's just,
I worry
and the
about
way
the
that
infrastructure in Detroit.
we all are,
Well, and
we
that's
all are.
but therein
But
li- but therein
here's the
lies a
thing.
deeper converse. I'm sorry. Yeah, go.
Well, I was going to say, but here's the thing. I wouldn't recommend that every place goes all electric. Because if you're in West Virginia, for instance, everything is coal there essentially. You're going to be putting far more pollution out than if you were just to keep gas. So it doesn't make sense everywhere, but I think the coastal cities, the big cities, the coastal states, it makes all the sense in the world, and it'd be crazy to not do that. They found that it's if there was a major storm, it would take a fraction of the time to get the electrical grid back up as opposed to getting the gas infrastructure fixed.
Hmm.
So in a natural disaster, everyone would be able to kind of get back to cooking and things like that when you wouldn't be able to with gas. It would take you longer.
Can we talk about the resource utilization that's used to power the electric grid?
Yeah. So a lot of times it's coal, nuclear, natural gas, and people may say, "Well, hey, hypocrite! You're banning that. You're talking about natural gas in a restaurant. Why is it okay at the grid?" Well, at the moment, they use the natural gas at 80+% efficiency, and you know we're not breathing that. But but in a restaurant, 35% efficient, really truly at its peak. 50%, like I said, was the unicorn. But truly, it's even less than that. Uh, and we're breathing that. We can have the best hood system in the world. We're still directly over that flame. We are taking in all of that.
Hmm.
So why, and like if you, again, wherever you sit on the political spectrum, we should all be conservative enough to say we should want to conserve the natural resources we have. We should want to be independent from any other country because they have oil or whatever the case is. We should, and as a business owner, I'm learning to like take advantage of things where you can. So if I say, hey, you can pay for this gas, or you can utilize energy from free sun or free wind or free water, those things that are renewable that no country holds a monopoly over, we can then become energy independent as we should be and stop worrying about the rest of the world, right? We should focus on us. So, however you feel about that, the fact of the matter is that like there are free resources. Why not use it? It's not going to go away. Not for billions of years. The sun's not going to go away. So use it. Why use the thing that we know is finite, that we
Hmm.
know is going to tie us to other countries? It just makes no sense. So yeah. So at the grid level, the nuclear, gas, coal, all that stuff. Depending on where you're at, your energy mix is far cleaner than most. So if you are in, say, California, they buy a lot of renewables, a lot of water, wind, and solar. If you are, in New York, you tend to have a cleaner grid. So it depends on where you're at. I would really look into that.
Okay. Something that I never realized was with the ventless with ventless, right?
Mhm.
What is the cost of the filter replacement?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say I don't have those figures exactly, but in talking to some reps on that, it is, I believe, I don't want to get married to a number, but I know it's far less than
Fair
getting
enough.
your ducts cleaned once a year.
Or
So
twice,
just replace,
or yeah.
yeah, yeah, at minimum once a year. It's cheaper to replace those filters a few times a year than it is to get that cleaning once. So that's a pretty big savings. And if you're a place, say, that is running the grill and the fryer a lot, you're gonna have to clean it more than that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
That's
I'll also
definitely the
say
case.
that I wouldn't advocate for ventless with gas because there's so much radiant heat coming off that, and essentially you're pumping that air back into your space, right? It's not exhausting it out. So you're putting heat back into your kitchen. It's going to make it very, very hot. But if you're all electric and you're, say, running induction a lot, there's no thermal
Mhm.
sources, and because of the speed in which that the air is pushing, it actually is pretty cool. I was at a conference recently, and they had that Evo griddle, and I put my hand right at where it was exhausting, which is on the bottom left, closer to your foot. Um, of the unit where the chef is standing, and it was actually cool air because it was pushing with such speed. It was cooling down the air as it was going through the filters.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and equipment like that works really well with high efficiency gas pieces or electric, like impingement ovens, right? If you look at
Yeah.
some of the stuff that South Bend has, or even like Turbo Chef, I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting because I think if you look at what the if you look at what the QSR segment of our industry is doing for
Mm-hmm.
equipment, it's gonna have an impact on every other segment of our industry. Private clubs,
Right.
hotels, restaurants. It's gonna have to, right? Like the QSR equipment, it helps supplement for our staffing issues. It allows us to be
Mm-hmm.
far more efficient, cook more efficiently. I mean, you
Right.
talk about the Vario cook system, right? That can cook
Mm-hmm.
without intervention of a chef. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's something to that, right?
Right.
But those things lend themselves really well to the ventless because
Mm-hmm.
they're very hot for the period of time that they need to be, but then they go to an idle state or a rest, basically a sleep
Right.
mode until
Right.
they need to be activated again.
Yeah. And some of them even use infrared, which doesn't put off a lot of heat really. So like, yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. And also in, say, places like gas stations or even like restaurants, if you're having a hard time running staff, you can have an impingement oven just say, okay, we're going to do all of our apps just already pre-done. Pop it in, it's out. It doesn't really need a highly trained chef to do that, right? But yeah, like we're finding that supermarkets, for instance, are having a hard time finding chefs, so they're now going to be creating kitchens that can be run with little human intervention.
Mhm.
So you know the impingements are a big deal of that, because then you could just take a cashier, put them on that station, and they have everything. They could just toss it in, just okay, whatever the item is, you put it
Number
in. If you
six,
Exactly, if you are
run
a
on
chef.
program, whatever. Yeah.
Right. So like now what they're doing is, say you are running one of those one of those gas stations that has like the made to order food, and you have a turbo chef in every single piece of it, every single place. Now you just need one chef to say, okay, here are the recipes and all this stuff. They upload it to the cloud and say they're going to fire it off February 1st. Every location beginning February 1st already has it. Yep.
Right.
No more training. You hit the button, you move on. So it's a way to kind of mitigate the fact that there are less chefs out there.
Mhm.
Now, I don't. That's not to say that it's going to replace what we do on the high level, because I don't think a robot can do what we do on the high level. To think
Right.
about food with nuance and purpose and meaning, and put it together in a very specific way, to layer the flavors, with thought, with purpose. I don't think a machine can think like that yet, but I'm hoping never.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
But from the standpoint of being able to execute massive quantity,
Hmm.
replicate motion, I mean, you can't deny that that's probably what's on its way into the marketplace in the next 5, 10 years.
I mean, people are always going to work on that. Yeah. I mean, as industries are finding that it's harder to find chefs, they're going to find a way around that, and tech is that way around that.
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
there'll always be demand for the high end of culinary experience.
Hmm.
Those who've mastered the craft, people who've taken
Right.
it to that nth degree. But
Right.
with technology moving the way that it is, and I know we're sort of off the main topic here, but at
Pretty
the end of
much.
the day,
Yeah.
I don't think we are, because I think it
Yeah.
ties into kitchen electrification
Yeah.
very well.
Right.
But I think it's inevitable to say that I think we're already experiencing a workforce shift, and
Hmm.
I think that this workforce shift is forcing more integration of what probably won't end up being what robotics look like, but really
Hmm.
basic robotics into our operations. There's impingement suites now
Hmm.
that have robotics for loading. Like it can pull a dish, put it on a conveyor, and run the process, and then
Hmm.
move it into a box. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
and if you write your menu in a way that utilizes that piece of equipment and the functions that it can do,
Hmm.
well, you just replaced one or two people on your staff,
Yeah.
maybe more,
Which
depending.
is, I mean, and it could be a necessary change. I mean, like I said, this pandemic has been a blessing for some people. It's been a curse for others. But for our industry, it's really kind of shown us our glaring flaws, right?
Mm,
I could like a little over a decade ago, I remember reading about Charlie Trotter saying that the customer is not always right, and people lost their minds over that. Like, how can you possibly say that? It took a pandemic to show he was right.
mhm.
Yeah, people don't know what they're talking about a lot of times. How many times has a steak come back because it's oversalted because your guest just took it and put salt on it? Which is why
Right.
every restaurant I walked into, I said salt and pepper shakers off. We do that work, right? We season the food. If they want something, they could ask for it. And we found that there was like a 90% drop in refires because of it,
Mhm.
right? So like this pandemic has showed us that like our industry has never really worked as optimally as it could, and in doing so has exposed this flaw where we are seeing people leave the industry in droves, right?
Mhm.
People have realized like I don't get paid enough, I work in awful conditions, I'm missing all this time with family, and I'm skipping out on serving some sorry, I'm skipping out on being with my mother for her 60th birthday so I can serve someone else's mother on her 60th birthday. we
Mhm.
are we are givers, and we have given ourselves to an industry that has ultimately, I don't want to say failed, but it's not where it needs to be. And although I love the American Culinary Federation, I just got elected as a board member. I was on a webinar with
Congratulations.
the Thank you. I was on a webinar with the James Beard Foundation, and they were talking about solutions to bring to keep staff or bring in more staff, and it was all superficial. They were saying offer a mental health day or something like that, or offer $1 an hour more. It may not be a lot for you, but it's a lot for them. Things like that, and I'm like,
But
but
it's
the
not.
but the root of the problem
Isn't solved.
is isn't solved. The root of the problem is the environment in which we worked. Right. On my podcast, Sustainable Overload, we had, which you were the very first guest of, we had,
Happy to do it.
yeah, we had Riley Redfern on, and she was a 3 Michelin star pastry chef. She worked at some of the best places on both coasts, and she was one of the best chefs, pastry chefs in the country. Period. And during the pandemic, she left, and she left to go pursue computer programming. And it may seem like, why would you do that? Go take less money, this and that. But she is happier than she's ever been. In the environment in which she was working in was one that was detrimental to her mental health. She wrote an
Mhm.
article for Insider where she talked about abusing alcohol and things like that to kind of cope. But ultimately, she was plugging back into her trauma, as she said, by going into those restaurants for 15 plus hours a day. It's just not a good way to run your life. So what are we doing as an industry to resolve that? And there's really no good answer. But what I have found in my own kitchen, my own electric kitchen, is I found that when my staff and I went from the gas to electric, we were happier. And I'm not saying like, oh my God, it fixed our mental health. But what I'm saying is that I found a significant decrease in like our, staff infighting for whatever reason. I found a significant increase in guest facing interactions, where our survey scores from 1 through 5 every year that we did with our students were somewhere in the 3.8s or so. We jumped up to 4.8 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
We were much more personable. And in a university where you have students who leave home for the first time, they're scared, they don't know what to do, they're kind of figuring out who they are. It's really important to be as accommodating as possible and as friendly as possible. And we find that when we're comfortable, people can feel that, right? If we're agitated, people can feel that.
Mm-hmm.
We have, as humans, what's called mirror neurons, which why when you walk into a room, you can feel the energy, you can feel how tense something is, right? So if you're tense, people feel it. So if you're more comfortable in your kitchen, more comfortable in your electric kitchen, that's gonna help you be a better leader. It helped me be a better leader for sure.
That makes sense. Same here. I don't know if you heard it at the end of my conversation with Rick and Craig, which a great presentation, and again another component on making the workplace a place where people want to be, right? Making, what did they say? I loved it. Making hospitality a noble profession again, right?
I like that.
But I was telling a story about how I had a mentor just point out the fact that my staff was mirroring me. And it was in that I really had to step back and look at who I was and how I was being. And I still want to be intense, I still want to be consistent, but at the same time I still want to know what my staff thinks of me. And
and those two questions: what does your staff think of you, and do you want to know what your staff thinks of you? That was really good.
Do you want to know?
Right. Yeah, I mean, like a lot of us would not want to know. But
or in the past at some point.
Right. But I think it's important to kind of take the environment, kind of what Rick and Craig were talking about, and kind of take it to their physical environment. Not just like, how are you treating your staff? Are they happy, this and that? But like, are they comfortable there? People don't take comfortability into account. People just assume, and like I'm guilty of this. We talked about it on the show, where we just say we have a job. We have a job that we got to do. And we're going to do it. We're gonna push ourselves. We're going to do whatever it takes. We're going to work as long as it takes to get to that level, to keep pushing past, to keep making everybody happy and be consistent. But are you comfortable? And I can tell you that in my career, I have done some serious damage to my body. I've abused it. I'm 32 years old and I have problems walking sometimes. Like my back is shattered, just through the abuse that I put myself in. But it's all about taking care of yourself, and your environment is a big part of the self. Right? We don't meditate in places that are chaotic. We put ourselves in a very calm, soothing environment. Right? You talked about on the show how you coming in to get yourself amped up would play, heavy metal music and go and do push-ups and stuff like that. But that's what you needed. You wouldn't do that in like a spa area, right? You couldn't walk into a spa and say, "Okay, I'm jazzed up, I'm ready, I got the energy I needed." So your environment is a big. So your environment is a big factor into your mental health, into how you operate. So if you want to make your staff happier, you need to figure out how to make the environment happier. If you are having a hard time putting out enough food because you don't have enough staff, then maybe electrification is the way to go, because you can put out more food with less staff and spend less time cleaning. Right? If you are concerned about, man, where am I going to find money to take, to pay my staff more? Maybe going electric will reduce the cost that you spend on chemicals, will reduce the cost you spend on water, will reduce your operational costs, and now you're able to take care of your staff better, right? There's so much more that comes from just like, cool, this is electric. I'm a hippie. This is awesome. There's so much more to it. The conversation is so much more nuanced. And I'm glad that I appreciate you letting me kind of talk about that because we as chefs need to be a part of that conversation because the people
Well,
making decisions about kitchens probably never worked in kitchens.
well,
So I'm
and
doing my
there,
part and I'm out there.
well, and you brought it up, and this is one of my philosophies: is I would much rather be a part of the decision that I'm going to have to deal with than having to deal with the decision I never had a part in. And
Right.
and you can't help but look at what's going on in the world. You can't help but look at kitchens, and you can't help but say there are probably some rules and some things that are coming down the line for our industry that we're going to be
Mhm.
forced to deal with. And I'd much rather have a seat at the table and determine what those are because,
Mhm.
again, like you just said, is the people who make those rules and those regulations have no idea of what it is that has to happen on the tactical or the strategical
Right.
level for the work that we do.
Right.
Nor do they care.
Right. We as chefs work in an environment where we have to make split second decisions every second of the day.
Mhm.
So we are working at breakneck speeds to cook food, which should be the simplest things that people think we do, but it's not.
Mhm.
And so, which is why I'm trying to do my part. Like I just last week, I did a presentation similar to talk about thermal comfortability and how all the operations work to OSHA. I'm going to be talking. We're talking with the EPA to develop the Energy Star certification standards. So making sure that the equipment that's getting certified isn't junk equipment, right?
Right.
We are having conversations with all sorts of people to make sure that the equipment being built is equipment that can work for us. Now, I'm happy to do that. I have obviously made a career doing that now. In doing this, I've become the nation's leading expert in all things electric kitchens, but we're going to need help, right? So like I'm slowly building a coalition of chefs who believe in this, who have gained experience in doing this. We have Rochelle Boucher, who's a national um, expert in residential kitchens of residential electric spaces. We have Drew Schultz, who is a commercial chef as well. We have Andrew Forline, who's also a residential expert, and we're building more chefs as we go. Right, not Gerald Ford, sorry, Gerard Kenny, my business
Thanks.
partner, but Gerald Ford's also, he cares, right? He's worked with this equipment. He knows the differences, and he understands. You understand the benefits. So we're building more of a coalition. We're building up chefs to understand. I got elected, like I said, to the ACF board. I'm very excited to do so. I have a meeting with someone at the ACF on Monday. I'm hosting the ACF Pittsburgh chapter meeting where we're going to be talking about this exact thing, probably an exact copy of this presentation, because we need
Mhm.
to have chefs engaged. We need to have chefs who understand. We don't want to be told what to do. We want to be able to control how these kitchens are being built. Here's a great little story that kind of highlights this, and it kind of opened my eyes to it, which is why I'm so passionate about it. I was so the first project I got was Microsoft, and I was on a call with the design team, and we were kind of they were still unsure if they wanted to go all electric, or rather, they wanted to go with induction. So I was explaining the benefits, explaining how it works, answering questions, whatever the hell that they had going on that they were apprehensive about. We were there to answer. We were there to help guide and educate. And I remember a kitchen consultant. This was somebody who was designing and building the kitchen, choosing the equipment, choosing the layout, choosing how these chefs were going to operate this kitchen for decades to come. And he said, "How can there be uh, an induction griddle, an induction flat top? What are you going to do? Wrap a piece of chicken in foil to get it to connect to the induction and sear? It's an utterly preposterous way of cooking." And I said, "Obviously, sir, you don't know what you're talking about because one, aluminum is non-ferrous. It's not going to be attracted to a magnet, and two, the 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 metal that is the griddle is essentially the pan. Is what's getting hot. So that's the level of ignorance. They don't even know how the equipment works, yet they're being paid thousands and thousands of dollars to build these kitchens for chefs. And I'm tired of going into a kitchen that someone else built. And I'm like, why do they do this? Why is there not enough refrigeration up here? Why is there not
Mhm.
enough storage? Why are all my walk-ins downstairs when we're doing all the work up here? Or why is my salad cooler over there where the salad station's over here? Like, it's just, and then we had to kind of rearrange some things. So my goal is to be that chef in the conversation, be the advocates for other chefs. But ultimately, as this begins to take hold nationwide, we're going to need more chefs to help.
Well, and I can't help but rewind slightly when you say, that list of professionals that you talked about championing, sorry, this movement. They're all residential experts. And I mean, as useful as that is for the residential space, that certainly isn't going to lead to good policy for professional kitchens, right?
Right. Yeah. So we're building not necessarily a fan base, but I guess like a fan base of people who care about electric cooking. We're working with as many organizations as possible, and I'm going to spread myself as thin as possible until we get more help, because I care deeply about this industry. This industry took me out of poverty. This industry gave me a home. This industry gave me a career, and I want it to work. And I want it to work for all of us, not just we working with the tools we're given. I want us to develop the tools that we're going to use. I want the chefs to start making these decisions and not just get handed all these pre-made decisions, right? So I'll be doing my part, and I hope that there are more of you out there. And like I said, well, I haven't said this yet, but like I say this all the time, I may not be the person that changes how we do things, but I hope that I inspire the person that does.
Well said. So, another question. I
Sure.
have a few more for you. Sorry,
Please.
I hope you got time.
You can cancel the rest of the summit. We can just talk about this. I'm all about it.
So, how would you recommend, a chef start to head down this path of understanding what's right for their kitchen?
Right. Well, short answer, call us. Right. You can schedule a free consultation with us. We'll talk, figure out what your pain points are, things like that. Like, one of the things that's different, that we found is different, is when we go into a project, we don't bother us talking to the architects or talking to the engineers or anything like that. We immediately start talking to the chefs. Who are the people going to be in those spaces? Tell me, what are your goals? Where do you want to take it? Tell me, what are your problems? What's currently slowing you down? Tell me, what are your needs? What are your wants? What are your hopes and dreams? And then I can then create what's called programming, create a kind of a document that says, okay, guys, this is the blueprint in which we need to follow. And I confer this, with the owners or whoever is kind of bringing us in, and say, okay, architects, engineers, this is what we need to solve. It's not just they want a new space, let's make it pretty. Is what are the problems and how we're going to solve it. So I work as an advocate for you all who want to go into a better space, and we work in tandem. I look at menus. I look at what menus you want to do, and that kind of gives me insight to how you want to use the kitchen, so I know where to place equipment, so everything's spread out. We look at everything, and then we offer training, and then we even take it a step further and offer what's called, well, I guess we're calling like culinary IT, where for a year after we built your kitchen, you can call, email, fly us out for retrainings, whatever it is, to kind of give you that safety net. So if you are an owner and you build a restaurant and you don't really know kitchens, too bad. When we get involved in the trainings, you're going to be there, right? And on top of that, we're going to give you that safety net. So if your chef leaves, he doesn't take all the secrets of how the kitchen runs, right? So how to get started? Call us. We can set you up with engineers. We can set you up with architects. We can set you up with everyone you need to make a successful project work and make your kitchen of the future, make your dream kitchen get built. Right. And we have connections. So say if you're in a country club, I happen to know a very good master chef who can come in and help revamp and revitalize your systems. Gerald Ford. Have you guys heard of him?
Thanks for the plug.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we have a lot of connections in the industry, and we know the process. We know how we know we know how, depending on where you are, where to find you help for financing. We in Pennsylvania, we're going to be writing the a rebate program. So if you are building an all electric kitchen, you can get money back from the government to kind of offset some of those costs. So yeah, like we are kind of plugged into every aspect of this, and we're, like I said, working with certifications and other things that I can't talk about at the moment that going to honestly change how kitchens are built, probably forever, hopefully. A lot of exciting things coming down that is going to be developed by a chef for chefs.
Touch back a little bit. How do those government rebate uh, systems work? How does that work?
All right, so the application process, and then you kind of got to go through the approval chain. So, say if you're in SMUD, right? So, if you're in Sacramento, for instance, and SMUD is your energy provider, that's just the acronym. I can't remember it's like Sacramento Municipality Utility something.
Smart.
So, yeah, SMUD. So they have a program where it's up to $5,000, and but you have to show where the money's going. So you have to kind of go through the process, have an application, explain the equipment you're getting, how it um, the upgrades you're doing, because you could get rebates for the equipment, you can get rebates for the energy efficient upgrades. So say your panels and things like that. And then from there it goes to a committee. They have questions. They'll reach back out. More paperwork. They'll reach back out, and then from there they'll award you your money. Right. But in Pennsylvania, we're going to be bringing that. We're going to be developing that from the ground up. So we'll be looking at every program we can find and figuring out what are the best of all of those and how can we help, and or how can we put it all together to make it like a Frankenstein, a Voltron of awesomeness, if you will. Uh, but like for this program specifically, we're going to be kind of gearing it towards public schools, specifically in underprivileged communities, because it'll kind of give you the best good, right? The best bang for your buck, because you're going to be influencing how children breathe for however many years that they're in that school. So if it's K through 12, if you have it all in one school for 12 or 13 years, these kids are going to be breathing in cleaner air, which is going to be huge.
You never touched on this before, but is what's the lifespan comparison between a gas piece and an electric piece?
It's a great question. I mean, electric has been kind of changing. The technology's been getting better and better and better. So ultimately, it's really how you run it, right? So you can have the best Vulcan range out there. If you treat it like shit, it's going to fall apart. If you treat it really well, it's going to last for a long time. I don't know of any studies that have actually holistically looked at it, which I'm interested in seeing if there are. But it's so new in America, I don't think it's been done. I will say that the how do I go about this? There are more options than you realize. So, for instance, if you have a restaurant, you have your burners, you have your French top, you have your griddles, all that stuff, right? But you can now kind of cut out an entire piece of equipment and say there's pretty wild, but there's an induction range that can be a French top, where depending on where you slide your pan can be as hot or as cool as you want it. And then once you're ready for service, can be swapped over by a simple, you just flip a switch essentially, and then like it becomes all burners. So you no longer have to have two pieces of equipment, and that will last a long time. Uh, yeah. So like, and because there's less components, like if you have like something that breaks with the gas line, it can be really hard to change. If you have an issue with, say, it firing off a an error code, you just simply get a new switch, essentially a new micro switch. Sorry, a micro whatever, like a little board. Plug it in. It's essentially a whole new unit. So
Okay,
like yeah,
so
yeah. So it's easier to maintain, honestly.
You got me coming up with questions. So here we go.
Keep
Here,
it coming.
next one. What about maintenance? Right? You can, with a gas stove,
Yes.
when a gas stove goes down, you can call most.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a mistake here and say most anybody, but
No, I
there's
hear
a
you.
number of people that you can call. What about
Right.
maintenance on an electric piece of equipment?
Great point. In fact, I don't know of any manufacturer that would go into a market without having maintenance people already trained and certified on their equipment. So I know Rationale, when they were unveiling the Vario, for instance, they were only bringing it out in certain markets, and because those are the markets in which the various
Maintenance.
companies have gone through their training. So if you can get it in your like in your market now, you're good.
Hmm.
We bought equipment that we didn't kind of check that out, and for instance, our Doyon deck oven, we had people who could work on it, but what we didn't think about is could they get parts. So when they were coming into work on, say, 8 a.m. In Sweden, they were gone for the day. So it was
Hmm.
really hard to kind of coordinate. So now, because of issues like that, if, say, going back to Rationale, you are certified to work on the equipment, you will have access to parts that you can get in your market immediately, so people aren't waiting.
So, if I understand you right, or maybe even to take it another step further, is
Mhm.
there's probably a lot more pre-conversation to see what's around you before you install equipment. Thinking about like a
So,
rationale install, right?
mm,
You need to do a pre-site survey, which also confirms now that you have a tech
mhm.
nearby that can service this piece of equipment.
Right. And I will say even that the beautiful thing is this is essentially an untapped market when it comes to electrification. Well, sorry, when it comes to like electric equipment in this country, it's essentially an untapped market. So if you are saying, I'm really thinking about going with your equipment, but here's some problems, they will get that fixed like this. If you say I can't get parts, guess what? Your local guys will have all the parts that they need. This is essentially a gold rush for the manufacturers of induction, so we as chefs have a lot of power and we have a lot of say.
Especially early adopters.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's how wok cooking came about. They said can't do it. They said, guess what? They figured it out.
How long has induction been around? So, I mean, I guess, for me, right, induction is not new.
No, no. Induction's been around for over 30 years now. Yeah. Just like sous vide's been around for a lot longer than that, but it wasn't until the technology was savvy enough to kind of handle it that we could actually cook with it. Uh, the technology's been around since longer than I've been alive, but we as Americans have the awful mentality of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Which it's awful because people who think like that never stop to think, is it working properly? Or am I just trying to maintain the status quo so I don't have to worry about change?
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's the latter.
Well, as a chef, I was taught that if it could be better, it's just the same as broken. So, um, and
No.
I think a lot of chefs have that philosophy as well. And I
Yeah.
think maybe that's just a conversation that we haven't really had as chefs. Of, you know, I'm sure I enjoyed the angry chef image that you pulled up at the corner of your slide
Yeah.
for myths, right? Of but don't
Yeah.
take my gas. But I guess when you put the conversation and you put the question back in our lap, in my lap, I can't
Yeah.
help but think about the things that have gone right and the things that have gone wrong. Like
Right.
one of my favorite conversations when I'm talking to a coaching client is, but is that true?
True. Very true. And oftentimes when I go into these conversations with chefs, I know that they're against everything I have to say. I know that. So I don't try to convince them by talking about points they probably don't even care about. So what I do is I say, you tell me, what are your concerns? And then I'll answer them one by one. What are you scared of? Not necessarily what are you scared of, like what do you think won't work, or what do you think would be wouldn't benefit your business. And then they'll say things like, I have someone with a pacemaker. Okay, well, actually, let me point you to this study. Well, we're concerned that we're not going to be able to. Actually, I had one chef that said we're concerned that the pans are going to be different, therefore I can't store them properly. I'm like, that's not true. All that changes is the metal, not the size or makeup or how it's kind of stamped out, whatever the case is. They just make sure this stainless steel now, instead of having like things like nickel or cobalt, whatever it is that isn't magnetic, now it has things that are magnetic, like other steel. So that's the only difference. Pans don't.
Yeah, if you're buying cheap pans, there will be a cost associated with buying pans, but with buying higher quality pans, you're going to have a longer lifespan of your pans.
To put it simply, you pay for what you get. You buy cheap, you're going to get cheap. But if you want the best, you got to put in the work. You got to put in the money.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there is nothing that I've heard so far from chefs that isn't easily answered. I had one chef who actually said, "I've worked with induction in the UK. It was awful." And turns out they worked with the coil. They didn't know what they were talking about. They said that they said it's impossible to do lacy crepes. It's impossible to cook fast, and we showed them that wasn't the case. Everything that they were concerned about wasn't true. Now, the scary thing is that a lot of times, those are projects that have actually gotten beyond the internal conversations. A lot of times, projects don't even get off the ground or don't even get brought up to architects or anything like that, because they'll say, "Hey, chef, I'm thinking about doing this," and their in-house chef, who they've probably worked with for like a decade, will say, "Not a good idea, trust me," and they do. But they could be doing better, and they don't, because they trust somebody who doesn't really know what they're talking about. Right. Chefs may know what's going on in the kitchen, but they know what's going on in their kitchen. They don't know what's going on around the world, because a lot of chefs don't bother to study it. I mean, and like, you can't. How could you possibly study everything? But you can reach out to experts like myself who are studying this, who are working with the governing bodies, of people who are developing the test metrics. I was on meetings developing test metrics for how to test or how to develop the standards for testing, say, an oven. Mm-hmm. What are you cooking with? What are the temperatures? What's the temperature in which your building is set to? What's the humidity level? What sort of sensors are you going to be using? How are you going to push those sensors to the breaking point? All these things, like all that stuff is developed before they even take it to the testing grounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so let's go. I mean, I'll give you a few minutes to wrap up, definitely. But one more question. You said give you a call if you have any questions. What are a couple really good resources, maybe one or two really good resources, if chefs don't want to make a phone call and don't want to go that deep yet? What are a couple good resources to get some good information to make some decisions and start the journey a little bit?
Well, if you wait a month, you'll have the best resource you can get, which is a decarbonization guide written by the William J. Wortham Foundation, which we were a part of. It's about 8 chapters. It goes into everything from commercial kitchens to residential kitchens to multifamily buildings to embodied carbon to all these things. And it goes very in depth. It has studies by the National Institute of Health. It has studies by the EPA. It has all these things. It has a whole myth-busting section that we've kind of fleshed out with that includes studies. So it's not just, this is what I think, right? It has so much. It's going to be coming out. I just had a meeting with them last week, March. Tell
me the name of that again.
It's called it's a decarbonization guide. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. There we go. So it's good. I'll send it to you in the chat, but this is where you'll be able to find it. They've been releasing each chapter episodically.
Okay.
I just saw a comment from Lance, so I'm glad you enjoyed it, Lance. Thank you, Chef. But yeah, so that will be coming out. That will have every resource compiled onto it. So I can sit there and say, I think it'd be really cool if you read the study put out by Stanford last week. It'd also be really good if you look up the Harvard study that connected the utilization, oh, sorry, the manufacturing of gas to the health costs and the death toll in this country. And then you could look into kind of the trends of restaurants and kind of all that. Well, I said power flicker, and all that kind of together, kind of.
Sorry.
No, it's cool. No, it's my power. But all that kind of together will kind of help paint you a picture. But
Hmm.
there's also, read into what's going on with OSHA. Kind of look into that. Read in what's going on with the EPA as they work on these these things. And also, I mean, go to LinkedIn. I'm constantly posting things that are happening, that are new. But I mean, yeah, it's so hard to point to just a few resources, but this one will be the most encompassing resource that's ever been done, as far as I know, bar none, on the planet. I've never seen anything like it before.
Awesome.
But it's true, yeah. So give it a month, and you'll have the most comprehensive resource ever written. And that was
Perfect.
done by economists. That was done by architects, engineers, chefs. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Big,
Awesome.
big,
So it should
big,
be
big
pretty
undertaking.
comprehensive.
Yeah, we're talking. I think the kitchen chapter alone is like 200 pages.
Okay. So we can look forward to, I'm sure, some synopsis and some summary work from you. I think, because you know how chefs love to read 200 pages of technical material.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll be putting things out. In fact, I might try to shorten that, kind of make it in like our own book about that, kind of make it easier for chefs to kind of digest. But
We all
we'll
love
also,
Cliff's Notes.
yeah.
I wouldn't have gotten through high school if it wasn't for him. So
Hey, I can't. I mean, college. That was my best friend. Good old Cliff. But yeah, I mean, also we'll be starting up season 2 of the podcast very, very shortly. We will be also talking more about this and kind of breaking things down for our audience. So that's also a good resource as well.
awesome, chef. Awesome. You want to wrap it up?
Yeah. So ultimately, I just want to thank you all. Like, thank you, Chef, for putting this together. You're going to hear that all day long. People are going to be thanking you because truly, I mean, there's not a lot of opportunities we get as chefs to speak to chefs unless you are part of the ACF or just spouting out on social media. So to have an environment where we can really speak to our audience and who we want our audiences to be, because we all care about this industry. We want to make it better. It's nice to have one place to do it. So thank you for putting this together. You can check out my website, as you can see on the Chiron below, forwarddiningsolutions.com. You can get in contact with me that way. Um, forwarddiningsolutions.com. Check out LinkedIn, where Chef Christopher Galarza is on there, and you can see everything that I'm posting there, all about these studies that are coming out. So much things are happening. And yeah, I mean, if you have questions, ask. We never get better alone. We only get better as a group. So allow everybody to help each other, and we're going to be better. So I'm happy I have something to contribute to this. And honestly, never thought I'd be sitting on a virtual stage with all these master chefs. Chefs I read about, I've dreamt about meeting, and now, working with them on one collective goal has been a dream come true. So, from me to you, thank you, and I really truly hope you guys have a blessed and a
Well,
great rest of your weekend.
well, thank you, chef. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, being here with us, spending a bunch of time. Really, from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate everything that you're doing, and thank you for sharing so much of your passion. And we're all chefs, and I think as chefs, we all
Mm-hmm.
tend to geek out on something. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's cool that you've, and I mean this as a compliment, a geek that you've
Yeah.
geeked out on the electrification of kitchens, because
Yeah.
I
No.
really think that there's a lot there. And so
Yeah.
thank you for your expertise and your wisdom. And I'll email you any questions if they come up. But
Please. Yeah.
really, thank you so very much.
Yeah. Oh, and if anybody knows how to get in contact with culinary schools, we need to start teaching this to students. I want, like I said, my goal is to get Americans caught up. So if there are culinary schools who are able to start teaching this, like the CIA, Johnson and Wales, whoever, anybody has a contact, send them my way. I'd love to kind of help educate or help get these schools on board to bringing out the next wave of chefs who are going to be leaders of our industry.
Perfect. Pass that along.
All right.
Thank you, Chef. Have
All
a
right,
lovely
Chef.
Sunday, and I will be in touch. Talk to you soon.
All right. Take care, Chef.
Thank you,
Bye,
Chef.
everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Chef Chris Galarza. That was, I don't know, I hope you enjoyed that. I really enjoyed talking to Chef Galarza for the first time. God, it was a little over, over a year ago, honestly, at this point. And it's been really interesting to me to learn all of the intricacies of the work that he does. And it was actually him who kind of helped me see that I really had a fond appreciation for the precision of electrified cooking. I like electronic induction cooking. I really do. I like gas wok burners, but that's not to say I've never worked on an induction wok burner before. Not telling you what direction to go in, but I really enjoy having conversations that challenge what I think I know. And he managed to do that. He managed to challenge some of the things that I thought I knew. And it's always so important to go into conversations with an open mind. Rick and Craig earlier were talking about, being wise enough to open your mind up a little bit and be willing to accept a truth other than what you think you know. And I'm really glad that I've been able to do that because it's opened my eyes so much more. So when I started hearing what he said, I couldn't help but notice that tinge of like, well, that can't be true. And before saying that out loud, starting to do some research on my own and saying, well, hold on, maybe there is some truth into what he's saying. Sometimes lessons come in the form of things you want to learn. And sometimes lessons come in the form of what you don't want to learn, but you need to learn anyway.